Hey guys, today we're going to have a cheeky little look at the new patch and see what's in store. In theory, it should drop in a few days. There are loads of little changes expected in this one because it's getting closer to Worlds, so they're balancing for pro play and stuff, but we'll mainly look at the big ones and also what they actually are going to mean. So who I reckon will be really strong going into the new patch. Now, Duskblade already got a hotfix this patch, right? They already nerfed it during the live servers because it was so busted, and there is actually another nerf. The damage is going to be down a little bit, but they're adding this new kind of element to it, I guess, where for ranged champions the damage is even worse and there's not going to be a slow on it anymore. It looks like it still follows the same scaling as the one on live, so you might not want to get too excited about this. For a Zed who buys this at level 10, the live damage would be 217 damage and the new damage would be 200. For Jhin level 10, the live again 217 and the new version would be 180. This is kind of exactly what happened last time. You remember like how AD carries kind of ruined lethality for other ranged champions or just champions in general? I guess like Jace and Quinn actually mostly, they now do a fair amount less because Jhin and Misfortune have been abusing it this patch, or to be honest anybody could. I'm guessing though, like I don't actually know, but if Jace goes hammer form he probably doesn't count as ranged anymore, right? I'm guessing not, but you might actually hit them first in range and then like dive in afterwards, so you use the proc anyway and it does less. Either way, it doesn't really matter. It's slightly weaker for everybody when you buy it, especially for ranged, but you feel it more later into the game. Let's look at the jungle changes to start with. There are quite a few nerfs here, but still not just some of the most annoying champions at the moment. So there is a Cho'Gath nerf though, definitely deserved. I think like your E damage is down later ranks and the percentage damage is also down to 3%. Like when you're going to farm the jungle, it's not going to be as good, I guess. Like your damage is a little bit down in team fights as well, but is that really enough to stop him being this ridiculous? Probably not. He's pretty crap early game anyway. He doesn't actually do that much except farm, I guess, try and gank and stuff. But once he gets his items and gets tanky, that's when he gets to the not cool level. The one to Zac though, if we move on to that, he is getting kind of gutted, surely. It's like the opposite. Your Q health cost has been doubled to 8% of your current health, and the cooldown is up a second as well. Your W damage has been halved early, so it's 15 to 75 now from 30 to 90 before. This just seems like ridiculous, right? Unless I missed something, they've doubled the cost of his Q and halved his way to farm the jungle. Doesn't that surely mean his time in the jungle is so much worse now? Like he won't farm as fast, you will take more damage because of that, and you can't gank as much afterwards. I honestly hate Zac, right? Like my words mean jack to this guy. It doesn't actually matter at all. He goes over them and I ban him, but it seems like crazy nerfs. I guess really we have another free ban now though. I wouldn't bother after these changes. Three big boys got nerfed this patch, so we have Elise, Gragas, and Rek'sai. I guess actually two of them are female and Gragas has the moves to fit in, so I guess it's three big girls got nerfed. Gragas' ultimate cooldown is up another 20 seconds rank 1, 10 rank 2, and it's going to be the same rank 3. Elise's base AD is down, and Rek'Sai's Q ranged fire thingy, the AD ratio is down 10% on that as well. Gragas is going to be the biggest one out of those two, I think. Like it's hard to gank without your ultimate, so maybe they've kind of just added a bunch of time in between ganks now, which makes him a bit less deadly. It's like, so to kind of explain it, right? People are lazy. They look at their cooldowns and are like, okay, I'll gank when that ultimate is back up, right? Those types of players who sit back and stuff now are going to gank less, I reckon. There is actually a buff to Kayn though, so his ultimate AD ratio is now up 40% to 150%. It's pretty cool, and I actually think Kayn is okay if you're able to play him, which sounds pretty obvious actually. He's pretty weird, okay, and he's hard to get used to. I've seen some basically in my games and some hard carry, so it really does depend on the player right now. When you buff a champion who's pretty new, it means that the good ones actually might become really hard to play versus now, like might become really strong, and bad ones though are actually going to be able to win, if that makes sense. Shyvana's also got a few changes. Base armor up. Your E now has an AD scaling, which is kind of cool. 30% on both dragon and human form, and 10% on that AoE on the floor that she leaves. The kind of trade-off though is your base damage on that ability is down at later ranks, so it's kind of cool like having an AD ratio, but does Shyvana really build any AD? Apart from Titanic, right? That's the only thing I can think. I see her go tank or Blood Razor normally. Maybe Titanic, but that's the only damage AD item. Unless you go like Trinity Force and like loads of other damage as well, that AD ratio isn't really going to do much. And if they're taking like damage off of the base as well, surely isn't that just a nerf? So overall in the jungle then, the clear winners are going to be Shyvana kind of, but actually just Kayn, who got a pretty decent buff. The losers, definitely Zac more than any others. Cho'Gath, Gragas kind of in the middle, and Elise, Rek'Sai just a little bit. Duskblade is going to affect Kha'Zix though in the jungle a little bit more than any others really. Like he was the main one who was using it. So what that actually means means for the jungle is we've still got Jarvan and Warwick, who I think are just insane kind of tanky-ish carry junglers. We have Sejuani, Rammus, Maokai. They kind of fill out our tank picks, and none of those are getting touched at all. Righteous Glory is still a very gross item right now after the buff. It's really good. You get into fights, but it has good stats on it as well after that kind of mini rework. If anything, it might free up a bit more diversity in the jungle, or it just kind of means everybody plays Jarvan, Warwick, Sejuani more. They'll get more popular, and Elise and Gragas and stuff end up losing their win rate a bit. To be honest though, Gragas is okay still if he goes full tank. I think it'll hit the AP version a bit more, and he's just kind of like an engage machine when he builds tank. Moving on to AD carries then, we have Sivir first. The Q damage is up, actually kind of over doubled early, like 55 to 135 now from 25 to 105. This could actually be really big in my opinion. If you run a triple crit build, so not Essence Reaver by the way, like Infinity Edge and 2 attack speed items, she actually has a decent win rate at the moment, and she scales like a beast. The change is over double damage early, right? And remember, it hits on the way there, and it can hit on the way back. So in theory, you could have just taken the Q damage up from like 50 total to 110 total. That's a massive jump rank 1. I'm sure if you played against Sivir, like you already know how much her Q can hurt anyway if she double clips you. Imagine now with these changes. I'd honestly be surprised if this doesn't bring her back even a little bit or make her better. Try Infinity Edge Shiv Rapid Fire Cannon with Warlords though as well. It's actually pretty legit. Jinx has a nice little change to her W, and no matter how much everybody flames me for saying it, her win rate at lower ranks is actually always really good. Your W is kind of nice poke damage later, but it's also one of your kite tools if you think of it like that with the slow. So having a slow 2 seconds quicker is actually pretty good late game if you're trying to peel for yourself. Finally, we have an Ezreal buff, a very small one though. Your Q cooldown is going to be down to 1 second early, and as someone pointed out before, this is probably more of a buff to AP Ezreal than AD. One thing to remember, and I think one of you lot actually, Maris tweeted me this on Twitter actually, Ezreal's Q reduces the cooldown of abilities by 1.5 seconds when it hits. Obviously, it's always done that, but it can mean a bit more than you think maybe, just because it's actually going to be even quicker now that you get it back up. I still think it's a pretty crap change though. So Sivir should be stronger, right? Jinx and Ezreal stay about the same. With the Duskblade stuff though, Jhin and Misfortune are going to be weaker. Maybe Draven as well, who is abusing it a little bit. They won't be like trash tier, and especially not Jhin, who can swap to Ghostblade and crit, but their win rates will probably drop a little bit this patch. What it means for AD, like Jhin I think still is number 1 along with Twitch for the late game kind of shredding, but Jhin is really good for solo queue because he destroys carry champions, like low health champions. I don't think he's that great against tanks until much later into the game, but lucky solo queue hasn't really gone with the tank meta yet. Tristana is still really good. Kayn is nice and safe, but nowhere near as broken as before. Pretty average, I'd say. Jinx is a really good replacement though at lower ranks. Finally, I would watch out for Vayne and Kalista. Both are really good tank shredders if that's the meta that we kind of move to now with Duskblade nerfs, and no real tank nerfs. Top lane has got some cool stuff in it this time around though. So the first one, Nasus, you guys know I love this change. His E arm reduction has now changed to 15 to 35% rather than a base just like 20 to 40 reduction. Also, your ultimate, the Q has a 50% reduced cooldown while it's active, and that applies after your cooldown reduction anyway, so it's like a 1.1 second cooldown on your Q with 45% CDR. I bet you didn't know, he's actually been slowly getting buffed and buffed. Like the last time he was properly nerfed that I could find was in Season 3, no joke. Patch 3.6, which was when Lissandra was released, his attack speed slow on his Wither was halved, and that was in April 2013, 4 years ago. End of last season, we had other buffs, the Q and the R range to stack together to give 200 range while active, and your ultimate buff granting some armor and magic resist when you activate it, plus also having that health from before. I think these changes are really good for top lane Nasus, but even I'm going to try playing Nasus as a tank support. I know you can't stack your Q, so it kind of makes that part of his kit redundant, but like 35% armor reduction is the same as the last whisper for your AD carry. Like that is crazy. You've also got attack speed slow and normal slow for the enemy AD carry. Like who wouldn't want to have that? You do percentage damage with your ultimate, you can tank decently well. It's a bit of a cheese thing, but late game it'll be so sick. Moving on to actual top lane champions then, Nautilus, your Q damage is up early and your ultimate cooldown is down 20 seconds, then 10 to rank 2, and it's going to be the same rank 3. To be fair, this is another one you could probably stick in support. That will be better, I guess, with these changes, but he's actually probably quite decent with Abyssal Mask in a tank build right now. Like we're kind of moving into that meta anyway, and the problem really has been recently that he gets dumpstered in the lane phase. Maybe this fixes that a little bit though, and we'll see him a bit more, but I think it was probably aimed more for a pro play actually. Now an actual legit just top lane change. Mundo mini rework. His E passive now, whenever he takes magic damage or pays a HP cost on his ability, he gets 2% magic resist, stacking up to 6 to 30% MR. The active on that means that his next basic attack will headbutt an enemy. It will do 3% of his max health as damage, but it costs 25 health. You also gain 60 to 220 AD based on your miss missing health. There are two things with this. Giving a champion 220 AD, giving Mundo 220 AD is ridiculous. That's more AD than having 3 Infinity Edges in your inventory. That is gonna hurt. The second thing is his passive. So imagine playing against a Rumble, right? Each tick of his Flame Spitter is gonna increase your magic resist by 2%, which can climb and climb and climb up to a 30% bonus. How are you ever supposed to kill him as an AP champion unless you have a ridiculous amount of burst, right? Maybe it's not that good normally, but I think we now have like a pocket Rumble hard counter. Even just an AP champion counter, I guess, like especially with Adaptive Helm, which reduces damage from the same source by 20% now on this patch as well. So with these changes, Nasus will probably make the biggest difference, I think, but Gangplank and Mundo should be both stronger, honestly. For Duskblade, like, it's going to hit Talon a little bit top lane, but more likely Jason Quinn, who get a proper shove up the arse from it. What that means for me is Cho'Gath should be a little bit weaker top lane from the other changes we talked about before. Like, I think his E was his main way of trading, really. We still have our popular picks, like Riven, Renekton, Jarvan, for example, that all still going to be really good. I would keep an eye on Singed and Maokai, though. Those champions, like, who can abuse the new Righteous Glory and just tank for days. They're actually really good for solo queue. So now we have our mid changes. Lastly, there are only a few small ones, and there are actually no support changes this patch, so go figure. Though, to be fair, support seems to be in a really balanced spot right now. We've actually only got changes to Luxor, a little buff on her Q cooldown and her shield. We have Ekko's E is going to be a reduced cooldown early. Xerath's W is going to slow better. His ultimate will do a bit more. And finally, Ziggs' Satchel is going to be having a reduced cooldown later into the game. These are all very minor changes, but Duskblade will influence it a bit more. Zed and Talon feel it a bit more, I guess, but not too much because they aren't ranged. I actually still think, though, Zed is one of the best mid laners right now because of how much work he can do, how much damage he does with that new Duskblade. It's actually kind of ridiculous. I'm still going to rave about how overpowered Malzahar is, but honestly, not that much changes. Like Orianna, Syndra are still really good, well-rounded picks. Ahri as well. You've got the safe laners like Orianna, Nivea, Malz, who just push and don't really ever die. You've got the assassins like the Ekko, the Zed, and the Talon. And then finally, you've got the roamers, also like Zed and Talon and Talia, for example, who just kind of ignore their lanes and win others. There's a lot of choice at the moment for mid laners, so whatever you pick, I think you're going to be pretty good this patch. That's going to wrap up the video for me then. I reckon the Zac nerf is probably the biggest thing here, but Nasus might pop off this patch. Who knows? Thank you for watching, and for now, I'll leave you with the robots.